It's that time of the week again, guys. The Bad Batch Season 2 Episode 5 Entombed drops tomorrow, or if you're watching this later in the day, then in just a few hours' time. Last week's episode, Episode 4 Faster, may not have been everyone's cup of tea, but I thought it was so much fun. And it wasn't for nothing. We got a major tease that we cannot trust Sid. The life she used to live puts her motives into question, and I wonder if she sent the Bad Batch to Sereno assuming they die. Whatever the case, Melegi now warned us, and going forward, we're gonna keep a close eye on her. Now right off the bat, the name of this episode is really interesting indeed. Just like the Solitary Clone, the Summit, or Plan 99, we've all got fan theories on what this one's gonna be about. Ultimately, apart from the reviewers, no one has a clue. I know there is a sentiment of apathy with some fans, but hopefully, this one can satisfy those who didn't enjoy episode 4. Now when it comes to a title like Entombed, a couple of images come to mind, and some connections to other parts of the Star Wars universe as well. One popular theory is this is the episode we go to Kashyyyk, where we might see Luminara and Julie, 6 months after Order 66, literally entombed, as we saw in Star Wars Rebels. The timeline of her arrest lines up perfectly with the Bad Batch Season 2. And if that's the case, we might also see Tarful and Gungi. Another theory, and remember these are just theories, they could all be wrong, is that we go to the moon of Nur, where we see the Jedi being put in stasis. Some of these Jedi initially survived Order 66, but they were entombed in an amber-like stasis as we saw in the Kenobi show. Could this be an episode that ties into Fortress Inquisitorius? Those are my two leading theories, but it could be something very different. As we tend to do in the fandom, we might be overthinking it. It could simply be Omega on a mission, and she falls into a trap, and she's entombed for an episode. I want the story to progress a little bit. I do think that while individual episodes of Season 2 have been really fun, it's generally been a bit disjointed, a lack of cohesion, but we have to bear in mind there are a total of 16 episodes, so we do have to be a little bit patient and give it a chance. The reviewers did say there are strong episodes, some weaker ones, but overall it's pretty good, so let's see what Entombed has in store. Now something I really hope to see in episode 5 is the return of Echo and Hunter, the whole batch back together again. Last week the pair were involved in a mission concerning crates of nerf nuggets, and just as Tech was in the spotlight last week, maybe this time we'll have an Echo based one. Echo has seen more war than most clones and endured so much hardship. I'd love for him to have his own episode, and I really love the idea of the show exploring one clone each week. I mentioned this in my full episode breakdown, but I want to reiterate it once again. Omega was in episode 4 without being the focus. It's good to see the creators use her in more versatile ways. She doesn't always have to be center stage, but her development is crucial, and I think this week we will get more Omega. Even Hunter himself has not seen too much spotlight so far. Episode 3, The Solitary Clone, the Cody and Crosshair episode, was particularly dark, and with tomorrow's episode being titled Entombed, I've got a feeling this is another sinister one. Let's wait and see. Now we're going to return to the Bad Batch in just a moment, but we have a huge announcement for Star Wars Celebration in April. That takes place here in London. The first guests have been announced. This is from StarWars.com. Anthony Daniels, Ashley Eckstein, Matt Lanter, D. Bradley Baker, Giancarlo Esposito, Vivian Lyra Blair, and Indira Varma, The Kenobi Show, The Clone Wars, the original trilogy, The Bad Batch, and The Mandalorian. They also say mark your calendars because additional single-day tickets are available from Friday. Really awesome stuff. And so now, my dear friends, we come on to a rather obscure topic, but it is worth investigating and talking about. So the Star Wars concept of pod racing, or riot racing as we saw in The Bad Batch, has been front and center over the last week, because the most recent episode of The Bad Batch, episode 4 Faster, gave us a brand new type of pod racing, riot racing on the planet of Safatoma with Sid. But the visuals and the themes are always evocative of the Phantom Menace, and I came across this very interesting opinion piece that I don't necessarily agree with, and because we're a community full of different opinions, I want to know what you think. So they think that The Last Jedi perfected a Phantom Menace concept and did it better than episode 1. I disagree. I think episode 1, The Phantom Menace, was an absolutely revolutionary film for that kind of thing. And I'm not just talking about the visuals, but the audio as well. The sequence was so sleek, and not to mention the CGI was well ahead of its time. It was done so well. That sequence is iconic. So while the cinematography in The Last Jedi was good, and there are themes that are praiseworthy, I don't think in this instance it stands up to The Phantom Menace. But let's go through the article and see their point of view. And the one theme they're talking about is racing, exploitative racing, racing. So they say, Star Wars The Last Jedi improved on a concept from Star Wars Episode 1 The Phantom Menace, which has been proved by the Bad Batch. While all three Star Wars projects may seem completely different in tone, they each include similar aspects. Despite The Phantom Menace and The Last Jedi being divisive for their times, some subtle ideas connect the two. This only continued in the Bad Batch Season 2 Episode 4's Faster. All three of these projects have a racing-centric scene. And as I say guys, The Phantom Menace was the first to do this, but this article claims The Last Jedi did it better because it improved on some pod racing themes. They say, The Last Jedi did this through Canto Bight, more specifically, the Fathia racing elements, which improved upon the political aspects of The Phantom Menace's pod racing sequence. Now this is where I disagree. I would say it built upon it, was inspired by it, but I wouldn't say it was better. Those themes stem from the rich and powerful of the Star Wars universe, using the lower class for their own financial gain and entertainment. The Boon to Eve pod race established this, with Anakin, who was a slave, being used in a highly dangerous pod race to satisfy the likes of Jabba the Hutt and earn slavers like Watto money. They say this was further explored in The Last Jedi, and detailed specifically in the script. When Finn and Rose visit Canto Bight, they learn that the rich and powerful of that specific town uses war, slavery, animal entertainment, and weaponry to line their pockets, and further the mindless entertainment, which is highly exploitative. This was driven home the most with the Fathias, the horse-like animals that we see Finn and Rose free from enslavement. The rich inhabitants of Cantonica use the Fathias and slaves for their own entertainment, with no care about their well-being or consequences on those they harm. And so now they move on to the Bad Batch. They say, The Bad Batch Season 2 Episode 4 doubles down on The Last Jedi and The Phantom Menace. Sid and her rival Melegi use the race and their drivers to further their own financial gain, whether it's gambling or otherwise. As is shown immediately once the races begin, they're just as dangerous, if not more so, than the Boon to Eve pod race from Episode 1. The races on Safatoma include traps and other obstacles set up by the organisers to deliberately make the track more dangerous to the racers. This is all done for the purpose of entertainment, despite putting the drivers at risk of death. Now with the Bad Batch being family friendly, they're not going to go too dark. They're not going to portray the same themes that were explored in live action. And in this case, unlike the other two, it's all being done in the context of the early Empire, whereas The Last Jedi was the First Order, and The Phantom Menace was still the Republic. But with the Jedi and the Republic being high and mighty, they didn't care about worlds like Tatooine, backwater planets. And similarly, Safatoma might be overlooked as well, if not encouraged by the Empire. And the First Order is basically the Empire 2.0. They benefited from the exploitation through weapons manufacturing. I'm biased though, as a prequels fan I prefer The Phantom Menace. I think they did the concept beautifully. The Last Jedi sequence was visually spectacular, and last week's Bad Batch episode was also really fun. But we've also got to explore the morally grey. In the episode of The Bad Batch, Tech is directly involved in the race, but for good reasons. But the element still remains in The Bad Batch that the races are dangerous, even for spectators. One of them was shot, and it's all for the benefit of the wealthy. The episode, alongside The Last Jedi and The Phantom Menace, proves that Star Wars should go deeper into morally grey concepts, and I would say that's exemplified in the Andor show. I would say that's where it thrives. It's one of the many reasons why fans absolutely adore the series. Otherwise morally sound individuals in positions where they have to do bad things for the greater good. Aldhani, Andor's decision-making, revolution with killings, and so on. As Luthen Rael said in his iconic monologue, he is damned for what he does, and forced to use the tools of his enemy to get ahead. We were told by the creators of The Bad Batch that there are some dark things coming in Season 2. We haven't reached that point yet. We're only at Episode 5, and I think things are still to come. The season has yet to get into the swing of things. But as I say, there's only so much they can show in animation, only so much they would do in a show like this. But The Phantom Menace for me comes out the winner, but that is not to put down the other two. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one. May the Force be with you, always.